As soon as they had gotten into the shipyard, they saw before them a wide, expansive harbor, separated by pile bridges. In the different harbor basins lay the warships, which looked bigger and more awe-inspiring close to, like this, than lately, when the boy had seen them from up above. Then it wasn't so crazy after all to imagine that they were sea trolls, thought he. "Where does Rosenborn think is the most advisable for to begin the search?" said the bronze man. "Such as one as he could most easily conceal himself in the Hall of Models," replied the wooden man. On a narrow landslip which stretched to the right from the gate, all along the harbor, lay ancient structures. The bronze man walked over to a building with low walls, small windows, and a conspicuous roof. He pounded on the door with his stick until it burst open, and tramped up a pair of worn-out steps. Soon they came into a large hall which was filled with tackled and full-rigged little ships. The boy understood without being told that these were models for ships which had been built for the Swedish Navy. There were ships of many different varieties. There were old men of war, whose sides bristled with cannons, and which had high structures fore and aft, and their masts weighed down with a network of sails and ropes. There were small island boats with rowing benches along the sides. There were undecked cannon sloops and richly gilded frigates, which were models of the ones kings had used on their travels. Finally, there were also heavy, broad-armored ships with towers and cannon on deck, such as are in use nowadays, and narrow, shining torpedo boats, which resemble long, slender fishes. When the boy was carried around among all this, he was awed. "Fancy that such a big, splendid ships have been built here in Sweden," he thought to himself. He had plenty of time to see all that was to be seen in there, for when the bronze man saw the models, he forgot everything else. He examined them all, from the first to the last, and asked about them. And Rosenbaum, the boatswain on the Krlskrn, told as much as he knew of the ship's builders, and of those who had manned them, and of the fates they had met. He told them about Chapman and Puke and Toll, of Hogland and Svenskund, all the way along until 1809. After that he had not been there. Both he and the bronze man had the most to say about the fine old wooden ships. The new battleships they didn't exactly appear to understand. "I can't hear that Rosenborn doesn't know anything about these new-fangled things," said the bronze man. "Therefore let us go and look for something else, for this amuses me, Rosenbaum." By this time he had entirely given up his search for the boy, who felt calm and secure where he sat in the wooden hat. Thereupon both men wandered through the big establishment, sail-making shops, anchor smithy, machine and carpenter shops. They saw the mast shears and the docks, the large magazines, the arsenal, the rope bridge, and the big discarded dock, which had been blasted in the rock. They went out upon the pile bridges, where the naval vessels lay moored, stepped on board, and examined them like two old sea dogs, wondered, disapproved, approved, and became indignant. The boy sat in safety under the wooden hat, and heard all about how they had labored and struggled in this place to equip the navies which had gone out from here. He heard how life and blood had been risked, how the last penny had been sacrificed to build the warships, how skilled men had strained all their powers in order to perfect these ships which had been their fatherland's safeguard. A couple of times the tears came to the boy's eyes as he heard all this. And at the very last, they went into an open courtyard where the galley models of old men of wars were grouped, and for a more remarkable sight the boy had never beheld. For these models had inconceivably powerful and terror-striking faces. They were big, fearless, and savage, filled with the same proud spirit that had fitted out the great ships. They were from another time than his. He thought that he had shriveled up before them. But when they came in here, the bronze man said to the wooden man, "Take off thy hat, Rosenbaum, for those that stand here, they have all fought for their fatherland." And Rosenbaum, like the bronze man, had forgotten why they had begun this tramp. Without thinking, he lifted the wooden hat from his forehead and shouted, "I take off my hat to the ones who chose the harbor and founded the shipyard and recreated the navy, to the monarch who has awakened all this into life." "Thanks, Rosenbaum, that was well spoken. Rosenbaum is a fine man. But what is this, Rosenbaum? For there stood Niles Holgersen, right on top of Rosenbaum's bald pate. He wasn't afraid any longer, but raised his white toboggan hood and shouted, "Hurrah for you, Long Glip!" The bronze man struck the ground hard with his stick, but the boy never learned what he intended to do, for now the sun ran up, and at the same time both the bronze man and the wooden man vanished, as if they were made of mists. While he stood and stared after them, the wild geese flew up from the church tower and swayed back and forth over the city. Instantly they caught sight of Niles Holgersen, and then the big white one darted down from the sky and fetched him.